We have guests on the program later on in our conversation segment to tackle those issues. I'm Kingsley Osadolo, and I welcome you to today's edition of Good Morning Nigeria. As always, we are live on the network service of the Nigerian Television Authority, and we're broadcasting from our Abuja headquarters studios.
And I am Yusuf Nadabu Usman. This morning we're discussing youth involvement in agriculture, and our guests are already seated in the studio, and then we have one here, and I have one, talking about somebody from Ibadan there. We have in the studio Dr. Emeka Okengwu. It's as a development economist, and of course, he is a former World Bank consultant and then a member of National Agricultural Transformation Implementation Plan of the Federal Ministry of Agriculture. As a member also National Technical Working Group for the 2050?
Yes, Nigeria 2050 project.
Yeah, that's great. That's the master plan for that.
Yes.
And of course, undoubtedly also, Dr. Emeka is a farmer. That's the most important.
That's the most critical.
That's the most critical one, really.
Good morning, Nigerians.
Yeah, you're welcome to the program.
Thank you so much.
Kingsley?
That's right, Nadabo. Thanks a lot. Let's begin with Dr. Emeka Okengwu, who is usually a regular guest on Good Morning Nigeria. Let's just have some conceptual clarification against the background of what we now know what agriculture is supposed to be and what it can achieve. Is there something right or wrong or curious about saying youth involvement in agriculture?
Yes, there is something very curious about using the word youth in agriculture. If you want to give a definition to the word youth, because it's a mindset that creates something for young people, okay, as otherwise talking about adults. Okay, and if you're talking about adults and you're looking at the age gap now, okay, that the United Nations and of course we have adopted as a country of who is youth, it's between the ages of 18 to 35. Some people want to move it up to 40. Okay, and then if you now juxtapose this against this very popular mantra that life begins at 40 and you're fully matured, okay, at 18, now you begin to now play around with the word youth. Okay, because in this gap, you either look at the youth, the mindset we have in Nigeria is that you're looking at people from the pro-poor perspective, people you need to help to be able to get on with life. But you're also forgetting that there are people who are within that age bracket that have PhDs, okay, that got married. Like in my own case, I got married at 27. Okay, I'd finished my master's at 26. So by 27, I wasn't a youth in that context. Okay, I was a father, I was a husband, I was an adult.
And now a great-grandfather.
Okay, and now a grandfather.
Oh,
okay, so you see, the import of what it is I want to place here is that it's important that when we're defining youth, because that's what's most critical in trying to discuss youth in agriculture, and then probably discussing the programs and projects that government has put in place, and why you keep needing to want to encourage people to enter into a sector that is all that can be. Okay, because agriculture is all, and I'm talking about all. There is no part of, a habitation existence or that agriculture does not play a central, not even a key role. So are you talking about agriculture vis-a-vis farming? Or are you talking about agriculture vis-a-vis food production? Or are you talking about agriculture vis-a-vis technology? Or are you talking about agriculture vis-a-vis logistics? Are you talking about agriculture vis-a-vis entrepreneurship? You understand what I'm saying? So yes. By the time you now begin to look at what it is we're talking about, you will now begin to see some sense in, I think, the latest of the programs our government has launched. And I'm very excited with it. The Presidential Youth Empowerment Scheme. You find out that for once, we are moving away from this traditional agriculture thing to get something that is a little bit more comprehensive that we can actually begin to process. And I hope we'll do that in the course of the conversation.
Before we get down to that, you got married at the age of 27.
Yes.
Already you're a father, then from there.
Yes.
You are a husband and then already an adult person as such.
Yes.
May I ask you this? At what age did you start farming? Because you are a big-time farmer.
I started farming at the age of, as far as I can remember, first I stayed a lot of my time with my grandfather in Jos. Mm-hmm. He was a miner. But of course, everybody in those days, has something to do with one farm or the other. My father was in the University of Nigeria, Nsukka. He was chief accountant, and we had farms. So right from primary school, and this is what I'm also doing with my own children. I've always been part of farming. However, it's important to note that the farming we did in those days, which we saw as recreational, is actually what we're still doing now, and we are seeing as business. You understand what I'm saying? The same kind of farming your mother and your father did, which we call subsistent, was able to help your father feed you people. There was the Rambu or the Lumbu, where they stocked food, and where you needed to go and take it, they will bring it until the next farming season. It's important that we understand that that kind of farming, which I did as a young child, is the kind of farming we are still promoting, okay, on a commercial basis. And this is why we are not making a lot of progress out of it. So yes, I was a farmer. This was when not only the love for farming, but the discipline for care. Because that's actually what farming, impacts into your head. That you have empathy. You see life growing. You help life to nurture. You get excited when you see your seed, sprouting. Now, that was all part of a mindset of teaching agricultural science. It's not the same thing with farming.
Emeka, thank you very much. Part of what you said earlier is very critical. That namely, there is a value chain and the whole conception of agriculture, not just farming now, and the locus of young persons in this value chain. I know you ticked off, well, is it just farming as farming? Is it food production? Is it logistics? Is it entrepreneurship? All of this is important, but how then do we deal with the lingering mindset that when you say young persons in farming or young persons in agriculture, you're almost dredging up memories of back to land program, this whole idea of farming with machetes and hoes and the drudgery of it all.
This is where again I will miss it. I mean, each time I come here and you miss the intro farmer, you see me say no, before I get offset you must correct it.
Yes.
Because I want everybody to see me as a farmer. And I go to my farm dressed the way I'm dressed. I go to my farm wearing tuxedos. Because you don't see people in that farm, with cutlasses and machetes, okay, except to be able to clear one or two weeds. What you're seeing is, technologies that we're aggregating. And this is where the major skill set comes in for these young people. Okay, everybody does not have to be on that land. Okay, now some people will be on the land with their technologies. Some people will be on the land with their accounting skills. Some people will be on the land, with their packaging skills. Some people will be on the land, with their marketing skills. So if you don't aggregate this, and you're just looking at me as that person who is probably tilling the ground and producing the food, then you're missing the whole value process of agriculture, because you actually have two value points. Okay, if you want to understand agriculture well, the first value point is at the point of skills and capacity. The second value point is at the point of volume, okay, packaging and value. This is the point you will now begin to cut out your market share. And I think this is where we are missing all this. And in between this, your first point of skills, okay, is where you have education, and then where you have technology.
Emeka, let's look at this now from deep inside, and then maybe see how the youth can appreciate the fact that you don't have to really go to the farm in order to be a farmer, and you don't have to really, till the line before you become an agriculturalist. The days are gone for all this, I believe, and that's what the government is trying to do. Trying to introduce mechanization, trying to bring in technology, trying to diversify the whole agricultural setup and have the value chain so expanded that everybody can be part of it. But the basics is that something has to be produced first before the value chain takes control. Now, that is where the trust of the whole thing is. Do you see youth, embracing this to get the product out first before the value chain takes effect and some other youth joining it?
Very good question. It will now depend on what product. And let us be able to discuss product lines. And you might be amazed. Yeah. Today, technically, Yobe states, Borno states are seen as, poor states vis-a-vis income generation. But a lot of people do not know that the biggest cattle market in West Africa is in Yobe State. Yeah. Okay, but it's not a market, it's a route.
It's a what?
It's a route, it's a route.
Okay.
Okay, where it's an aggregation point, where cattle are aggregated and then they move out of, they now start moving to other locations. Now, I want you to just imagine if the government of Yobe State decided to get into forage production and get into cattle fattening. And with the background that cattle, for now, at what we call a first sale value of 100,000, generates 4 billion every day in Nigeria in sales. If we are going to be depending on the statistics that 40,000 cattle is slaughtered in the western or a southern part of Nigeria on a daily basis, it gives you a daily income, I didn't say monthly income, of 4 billion naira.
Daily?
Yes. Right. At a first sale value of 100,000 per cattle. You are from the north. You know that you will need to put a gun to the man's head to take his cattle 100,000.
Yeah.
Okay? Now, and imagine if you're selling this cattle on live weight and you were able to fatten that cattle, and it takes 90 days or so to be able to get a cattle from very low, weight to about 500, 600 kg. Right? So that means that cattle now has a value, if you're selling again at 1,000 naira per kg, of about 500,000 naira fattened. Imagine if the government of Yobe State, which is very low on revenue generation, goes only into forage production. And then you were doing this forage production on cadastral basis, where you had young people who were now farming on per hectare, output. Do you know what will happen?
What will happen?
What will happen is that you won't have any poor person in Yobe State. Okay? You won't have any driver in Yobe State. You won't get anybody who is your megad in Yobe State, except your people to be paying 100,000 a month. And there will be peace. And then these pathways that you want to create would have been established. Now imagine, a lot of people again do not also know that in building what we call the shelter belts in Nigeria, we used neem to create a lot of these shelter belts. So all over northern Nigeria, you have neem trees growing. Do you know the most potent, ingredient for organic fertilizer? It is neem seed.
Most potent?
Yes. Please Google. It is neem seed. And from that neem seed, you can get neem oil, you can get so much. You can even get pesticides and insecticides from neem. So, you see...
Emeka,
yes.
I know I'm still on this subject matter. As it were, if we don't break out of a certain mode of thinking, we probably will be stuck. Not that, but I'm sure you'll agree. We'll still be stuck on the old ways. Because what you're just describing now, you're just taking one state.
Yes.
And you're taking one critical activity, yes, in livestock production, yes, for instance.
State, one product.
Just one product. Yes. And saying, look, do nothing else except forage production. Yes. And you can see even the value chain in that sub-activity, yes, of forage production. Yes. I know, of course, you've consulted for the World Bank and you also sat on some committees with the Ministry of Agriculture. What is the philosophical orientation? Do we have this kind of understanding that therefore would drive policies, programs, and projects?
I think it's what you call red tapeism, okay, if you may. Because right now, we're trying to chase a project, and I've chased this for over 8 years. It will surprise you. And I've said, if you don't align the technologies you've acquired, because all the agencies critical to developing agriculture is outside the Ministry of Agriculture.
All of them?
Almost. NABDA, which is very central, NABDA is the National Biotechnology Development Agency, is under Ministry of Science and Tech, where you have the only gamma irradiation plant in the whole of West Africa is an agency under Ministry of Science and Tech. The Raw Materials Research and Development Council is an agency under Ministry of Science and Technology. Now, if you go to look at the publications of Raw Materials Research and Development Council, it has more to do with the agro-allied sectors than anything else. Okay? Then you come to agroforestry. It is under the Ministry of Environment. You come to your dams and water bodies. It's under the Ministry of Water Resources. Then you have the agencies that are in charge of fisheries under the Ministry of Agriculture. Are you beginning to see the disconnect? And if these people are not synergized, so we decided to create this program where everybody could come together by first and foremost going to Ministry of Science and Tech to say, you people are central. FIRO is under Ministry of Science and Technology. These are the people in charge of food technology and packaging. Do you understand what I'm saying? So the mindset is first and foremost, you can only decouple it when you appreciate that agriculture has very little. I mean, in our administrative and governance structures, it's shown. I can give you another example now. Look at NIPRID. I've mentioned NIPRID here in one of my... NIPRID had gone to do a research using 2 plants, scent leaf and bitter leaf. And they have been able to develop a protocol that reverses diabetes. Piloted, gone through all the clinical trials. They have even signed an MOU, okay, with M&B to mass produce. But they can't mass produce. M&B cannot mass produce because there are no people planting scent leaf or bitter leaf on commercial basis. You need to be able to get these things in commercial quantities to be able to now do that phyto extracts you need to produce your medications. Okay? Now, stay staying with Yebe. There is a strain of corn that grows better in northern Nigeria, can actually do 3 circles. Is there? Nobody is talking about remembering that corn now is the biggest. You're from the north, I keep saying that. People, you will tell Nigerians that rice is not staple to your people. What is staple to your people is masara, is corn. But do you know the truth? The struggle between man and animal for corn is 90 to 10. Animal taking 90, man 10. Because if you have a poultry farm, trust me, your birds will eat before your children eat. Sure. It's simple.
Yeah.
Your chicken, and they eat like locusts.
Much more than what your family can
okay?
use.
More than what your family. And you see, 80% of what you use in making these things are grains. And then you look at a situation where you are traveling from here to Lokoja on a flat land left, right, and center, and all you see are bushes. And we keep talking about desert in a country that should be talking about grain belts. And this is happening because we have not been able to get out of that mindset of saying agriculture, crop production. No. Has little or nothing to do with, it's just a stream of agriculture. And the moment you have that understanding, then, Nalado, again, sorry, gentlemen, you people are broadcasters, respected. You come here to work every morning. But do you know that the laws of Nigeria allows you to enter into farming? So do you know what it means? You can actually become a communicator. You can bring your skills as a broadcaster into aggregating, a farm project. And then you are part of that system by just simply saying, this is how we're going to be marketing. So our forefathers, our constitution, our systems taught it through. I think it is for us to get out of a mindset. I can share some of my experiences, not so nice, where you have agencies,
We would allow you to do that much later in the program. Doctor, your revelations were really startling and puzzling. I know you're not saying this for the first time. You've been pursuing it all the while. But the surprising thing to me is how wealthy, how rich we are in this country. There was a time I attended a conference in Germany tagged Nigeria too rich for dignity. Now, with all this and with your efforts and the rest of them, I come from the north, as you said, and we've been doing that. When you look at the value chain and the farm value chain there, rice is more or less like foreign to us as we grew up, because we know corn to be the in thing. We take rice in Christmas, on Christmas days, and on salad days, and the rest of them. But here we are today. Maize has been given that backseat, as you said, given to the birds you have and the rest of them. My worry is, how do we, as we are talking about youth now, how do we get the youth to understand what Adewale is saying, that the riches or the richness or the wealth in agriculture is enormous and enough and more than enough for all people in this country to tap in? How do we get that across?
No, the reward. Why do people want to work in NTA? Reward. Why do people want to work in banks? Reward. That's it. Okay? The moment you create a reward system that is clear, But that reward system has to be bordered on you creating very clear financing regimes that must have a component of what they call patient capital. This is what we are missing and lacking in Nigeria as a country. Not even the Central Bank of Nigeria is giving patient capital. They don't take any risk, unfortunately. So all the development financing you talk about, what you hear is loan. What you hear is bring a bank to guarantee the loan and then we can give it to you. That's not how it's done. My young brother talked about the Netherlands. It's a country I'm very conversant with. I can take an hour, describing what they do in the Netherlands. South Africa has what they call the agricultural and the land bank. What the land bank simply does is to be able to support agriculture, support research, support what you call patient capital or green funds, okay, before you, or equity if you may, before you now start getting to the point of debt. Now, the moment you have this, and you see what you now do is that when you want to go and get an agri loan, go to the Facebook, you see everybody advertising that they can give you a business plan. Cut and paste, cut and join. When you take that to the bank, they are not as interested in that cash flow as they are interested in your collateral. Now, most countries in Africa are no longer doing collateral lending. They are now doing what we call cash-based lending. Now, if you have, and this is where it gets more interesting, my brother, we'll have silos. Let us use the silos as a clear example. That we are now using the silos as a basis of now creating our value systems. Okay? So the first target is make certain that the silos are full of grains. The second target will now be for those who want to do macaroni. Look at all the adverts you see about Indomie and all that. These are young people, sassy, uptown children celebrating Indomie. What are they eating? For crying out loud, green. That has now been molded into something that has become fashionable. So the major problem is that we have not been able to establish first those financing regimes that can be able to now create what you call clear rewards. Okay, clear interest. Where your son is saying, please, they want you to come and take over from me, NTA. And the man looks at you and says, are you for real, sir? When I can make $1 million or $2 million on a monthly basis just doing the same thing for a company that is producing Indomie. But there has to be that volume. And this is where you now need to create what you call your volume matrix. And what is the volume matrix? You must allocate land. Okay, when the young man was talking about per hectare yields. Now, this is what drives agriculture. The moment you're not able to define first your per hectare yield, second, against your national requirements, third, against your industrial needs, you're not able to get into the market. Because the market is all about any contract you want to get into now has to be a contract that is based on your capacity and ability to be able to sustain your contract.
Dr. Okengwu, when you review what you have said or what you are still articulating, the question is inevitable whether we have a holistic capture of all of these issues. Why am I saying it? You're talking about patient capital, you're talking about targeting consumption, targeting industrial production, and so on and so forth. And here we are. We have heard from time to time, even in past agricultural programs, that, every state has at least one agricultural produce. Or even every local government has one agricultural produce. Bring 100 persons from each of the 774 local governments and then get them going. In terms of pulling people off the streets, those who are looking for jobs, that would be a pro-poor idea, and obviously poverty alleviation program, which is not the essence of agriculture. The essence of agriculture is a business, a rolling concern, a going concern year on year. Not that we finish this scheme and then we hop off and they're waiting for the next round to come. What is it that we are missing? Earlier you were talking about the use of extracts of bitter leaf and the other components, and then to say, look, let's get persons to cultivate this on a commercial basis so that the off-taker, which is a pharmaceutical company, knows that, look, there is assurance of supply. You talked also about, getting Yobe to produce nothing to export, just fodder, for livestock. even in the latest program, have we factored all of this in, or we're just looking at spread, number, equity of all local governments being taken care of, and some 700,000 persons being taken care of? I'm saying this so that at the end of the program, when it is being evaluated, we don't miss our target one more time.
Sorry, well, like I said to you, I'm going to be talking out of experiences. We haven't. Though, let me say it's work in progress. We haven't because if you talk about those 774,000 people you're talking about, pulling 100 from every local government, and you ask what they're producing, there might be things that can even run them into trouble eventually. Why? Because in the first place, you are giving it to them as a loan they're supposed to be paying back. That is why a lot of these programs fail, if we want to tell ourselves the truth. Okay? 2, they are producing what they can consume at a very primary level that has little or no value to it. My young brother talked about focusing on fattening cattle and cattle meat. You know what he's doing? He's only recovering 45% of his cost and losing 65% of where his profit is. Do you know where his profit is, Kingsley? It is in the bones, it is in the marrow, it is in the hoofs, and it is in the horn. The moment that young man begins to process his hoofs, there's what they call in Germany CLC, lightweight concrete, cellular lightweight concrete. It is made out of cow hoofs. I went to that factory and I was amazed when they told me. And they said to me, listen, the cow hoofs is like silicone, okay? It's like fiberglass. And it is degradable fiber that can be strengthened. Look at the skins. Everybody is wearing, Madame is carrying a Givenchy, a Louis Vuitton, a leather that somebody just uses iron to put Louis Vuitton. And then you start paying $1,000 or $2,000. And all she wants to go and show people is that small metal that is carrying Louis Vuitton. Meanwhile, you've been set back your 2 months or 3 months salary. Yeah? For that, yeah. For that bag. Okay? So, if we don't have this understanding, and this is where aggregation now comes in, and that's why I'm a little excited about the Presidential Youth Empowerment Scheme that now seems to be a little bit more comprehensive. Now, but in being comprehensive, we must be able to also look at 1, policy, which is where government comes in, 2, program, which is now where your business, your feasibility, your programming comes in, and then action, which is now where your funding comes in. But funding comes in at 2 ends. End number 1 is that I've gone to almost every notable research institute in Nigeria. I can mention 1 or 2. NAPRI, under ABU Zaria. Please take a camera there. You will wait for Nigeria. Those guys have developed streams of fodder that can grow in the desert. An institute here. You go to ARUCN.
No commercialization.
I said, we are trying to now get into a relationship with them. You go to ARUCN, they have 2 volumes of research outputs. And each volume is about 5,000 pages of research outputs. And I'm talking about in every area of the agro and allied sector. Now, in all these things you're talking about, nobody has ever mentioned that any of these people are producing medicinal plants. Yet, your greatest pathway now to reducing sugar is by taking, this local medication. There's a seed they call a bere. Yorubas call it a bere seed. Okay? Extremely bitter. Grows in the wild. Take 1 spoon. Put inside your mouth and drink water if you can be able to drink it down. Do it 2 days, your sugar crashes. This is something practical. Now, we are not looking at abere. We are looking at insulin. Look at soursop. Crashes your postrate. And this is something you can practicalize. We're not looking at soursop. We're looking at Metafon. Do you understand what I'm saying? But now, when you go to...
On surgery.
Yes, and when you go to Metafon, you'll be seeing that the organic extract in Metafon, or whatever, now comes from soursop. And we have NIPRID that can be able to do this. So it's all about, first and foremost, aggregating our research institutes to be able to understand that it is all about research. And then getting people to say to these young people, you know what, let us first and foremost give you patient capital. But that patient capital is going to now be driven by aggregation. My young friend again talks about cattle. The question you should have asked him is, how do you fatten this cattle? At what cost does it come? What do you use? Where do you get your feeds? What volume of cattle do you have? How do you get to a transportation? Do you have an abattoir? Now, I'm missing what is the most important in his business? Blood. The most important component of feed is blood meal. With all the cattle we are slaughtering, there's no facility in Nigeria producing blood meal. We're importing it. That will now begin to tell you to what extent we are not understanding it.
Look, the more you speak again, I mean, the more we realize that perhaps we need to go back to not just the drawing table, but almost a summit of all of these issues. I asked the question so that we don't miss our target at the end of the program. Look, when you list all of these things that need to be done, and they are all very essential, who has what task and who has what production target? Who has what production volume? Now, you understand what I mean? It is not sufficient to say, okay, you're going to engage, let me say, let's take Edo State, or let's even take Lagos from each local government. Lagos has 20 local governments. You take 100 from each local government. What is their target? What are they producing? Is it merely to go and scratch the earth, cultivate yam or cultivate cassava, and then you grate the cassava, you fry gari, and everybody drinks the gari, and that is the end? So, do we have all of these crops as targets?
No.
Do we have all of it? Even if it is just to say, look, it's animal feeds that we want to focus on. What are the youth in Yobe being primed to do on account of what you are telling us this morning?
And even at that, when we look at what you're saying, you know, when he first made this statement, it made me laugh because I was just listening and getting carried away. And most of our viewers will be doing the same because the revelations are really startling. You mentioned earlier, really, that what we are missing is the reward system. People want to work in the NTA because of this reason, in the banks because of that. Why don't they want to go to the farm? That reward system is very important. And we're talking about youth involvement in agriculture.
Yes.
How do we now get them or make agriculture attractive so that they can come into it? The reward is the end thing.
Yes.
How do we get that?
It's very simple, sir. Create an NNPC for agriculture.
NNPC for agriculture.
No, create an NNPC. Create a board that aggregates. How did the white people, also get the reward system from agriculture? They got it through the commodity boards. Anybody whose father was a millionaire in the 50s and 60s was a produce trader. Depending on the chain you were either at the lower chain or the mid chain, and then depending on one volume, you could be able to move together. The people now gave you loans to be able to buy trucks that moved from one location to location until it got to the factory and got to the sea using what they call valorization in economics. That is what it is. So if you have this aggregation, and do you know what they did? The first thing they did was to develop the research institutes in whatever area that they wanted. When they wanted tobacco from northern Nigeria, what did they do? They developed the Tobacco Research Institute in Zaria. And then started now making certain that tobacco was produced from that area. I'm sure you met tobacco in Zaria.
Yeah.
Now, sir, you're from Edo. NIFO was like any research institute you could see in New York. In fact, if you got into NIFO in its heydays, you could take pictures and people thought you were abroad. Now, they developed NIFO to start doing the seedlings, okay, that they now started planting on the land. The same thing for rubber. The Rubber Institute.
NIFO started as OPROS, Oil Palm Research Station.
Do you understand? So research, this is why we in our own program were saying, let's be able to now go to those who are supposed to be in charge of this research, outputs and technologies. Ministry of Science and Technology. But now, the way to go is not to now have ministries even building synergies. It won't work. From my own little experience, you just need to get a national body, probably a presidential task force or something that now begins to bring everybody to identify one, like I said, our national needs. What do we need to consume vis-a-vis corn? Now, what hectares of land do we require to get it? Where can we plant it? Where are the research institutes? Where are the seeds? Where are the storage?
And going forward, we had to import maize the other day.
Yeah, sure.
Yes. Borrow. We keep borrowing maize. I think we even borrowed.
Maize.
And now that you have these thieves that have gone to break into storages, okay, including even research storages, including even treated seeds. Now, what it means is that there might not be any seeds to be able to support farmers with. I mean, it's a reality that we also need to think through. And if we don't have it, and our economy is dwindling as it is, what are we going to be doing for food security?
Well, many thanks, Dr. Emeka Okengwu. And the issues you raised are many. Red tapeism here, the fear of this and that, and the non-usage or implementation of research outcomes and the rest of that. These are very big issues that will take maybe a whole lot of what they're talking about. But nonetheless, we scratch on them and then see how we can make headway in trying to discuss youth involvement in agriculture.
It appears we can extrapolate, Dr. Okengwu, that when we begin to get all of this right, we will see the gradual, if not automatic revolution of our agriculture, and ultimately the phasing out of current agricultural practices, which to a large extent remains back-breaking, so many persons of our population being engaged in it. And as one generation succeeds another, you will find your niche in the value chain, and that you don't have to be the sole person to cultivate 1 or 2 acres before you add value to what is playing out. But finance is key. And one of the things you have stressed this morning is to say, look, there appears to be an over-reliance on debt rather than patient capital. You hear that even in the Anchor Borrowers Program, which is yielding some results, no question about it. But what we are saying is that what the Anchor Borrowers Program is achieving now could be a lot more if we had patient capital distributed in a number of key areas. I'm fascinated by this aspect you talked about, just producing fodder for cattle or producing fodder for livestock or growing corn, in such quantity that our silos will all be stacked, to the brim. How do we move from the mentality of debt, that's to say a loan, whether it is rock bottom 1% or 2%, to patient capital, and ensure that you monitor it along the line, and over time, persons begin to benefit from it?
Thank you very much. What is important, sir, is that you must create that back end. Because you see, in giving a loan, the assumption is that the man has done everything he requires to do. He's done his land mapping, he's done his soil testing, he's done his irrigation, he's done everything, and then he now takes loan. But that's not the case. Okay? We have the NALDA. We should have been part of that Anchor Borrowers Program to have mapped out those lands, now gotten Ministry of Water Resources to have now marked out the irrigation or water systems that you need and all that, and then you now have a tailor to fit. So what happens, like I said, is that like Narado is dressed, he goes to his farm, looks at what is happening there, walks into the farm office as air conditioned. His gate man, who probably owns the land, now has a percentage of that thing based on probably the shared prosperity that they are talking about. Now, but when you are fixated on debt, and you're fixated on debt, when you have not been able to now ascertain if the back end has been done, which is why most of these loans are starting to be corrected. If we do a proper study of them, the rate of returns, it's very mind-boggling. A lot of people can't pay back that money, and which is why Central Bank is now insisting that whatever it is you do, you must get somebody to be able to guarantee the loan for you. If we did that on cash flow basis, and we were very certain that this guy was going to be returning per hectare yield, okay, ask yourself a question. The big anchors, the people who are supposed to now be the major anchors or the primary anchors, how many of them were able to run their silos? How many of those silos are operational? How many of them were able to get that feedstock from the people who are supposed to be feeding them? So there's also that disconnect between the aggregation at farm gates, okay, and then the storage, which will now actually now make whoever it is that is a primary or major, off-taker to begin to now plan your value process. But it is not rocket science, okay, and it is very easy to resolve. First thing is that no matter what it is we do, it's such a shame that in a country as big as ours, with all our whole financing mechanisms, you now get grants from international donor agencies. Even the ministries of agriculture will be going to IFAD to go and look at grants to be able to support some of these scoping studies, not even the bankable feasibilities. And this is where it begins to get a little bit worrisome. Why can't we create this, even if it's a tax system? Like in education, you have education tax, where you now have, okay, for everything you pay, there is 1% agri-tax that is going to be aggregated and now be used Now do 4, 1, research. 2, land development. 3, for capacity building. Okay, 4, proper implement. Because you can give somebody a water pump and say to him, okay, take this water pump, and he has 2 hectares of land, and he's buying fuel at 300 naira a liter, 100 naira a liter. He does not know that the cost of fuel is going to be affecting his total output. Okay, remember the days of cassava. Nigeria had gone to sign, a contract with the government of China then to supply $3 billion worth of cassava chips. What were their cassava chips going to? For their cow. For the cow foot and mouth disease. Yet we couldn't even do 10% of that contract, because when people were now encouraged to farm and they started producing the cassava, at drying, they found out that the volume when they harvested and the volume when they now processed, they couldn't sell. So the cost of production, now started shining, stripping the thing. So they couldn't sell. A lot of those cassavas got destroyed on the ground. And because we didn't have also a system to aggregate and evacuate and store and process, government couldn't do much to help. Now, the people who are going to take those loans were now forced to pay back. So, in being fair and clean...
And next time you ask them to go into cassava production...
No, they take the loan and then go into trading, which is actually what is happening. So, I think for us to be able to give more credibility to these programs, I think I will want to beg NTA to probably do... I don't know, you could call it a spot or something, and then go to these facilities and see if indeed, 1, the people have been engaged, 2, the primary off-takers are getting, the feedstock, and 3, how come, if not, what is happening and what can be done? It's not investigative to put anybody down. It is for us to be able to now identify these gaps and then build a country, because we must create, and I keep saying this publicly, a minimum of 20 million jobs. We must create it before 2023.
What you are saying, that's where the jobs are.
Yes.
Nadabo.
Yeah, sure.
Right, that's where the jobs are. There's no magic to it. It's just to get it right?
Yes.
Because we have the basics, as it were. We have the basics and the mechanics. We already have a head start. Research products are there, or research outcomes are there, getting them commercialized. Dr. Emeka Okengwu, part of the reason why I asked that question was about the tail piece of it, namely, you probably have encountered graduates of any of the agricultural disciplines who will tell you they have no work, they are looking for work, X, Y, Z. In addition to tweaking our policy and ensuring that either the research agencies or those who are involved in agriculture don't work in silos, what more would you like to see in and from our various faculties of agriculture? Do we have this universal view of agriculture such as you have articulated this morning, so that when you are training your students, you can begin to let them see where the opportunities lie, and then once you are out, you know where to fit in?
In our days, Kingsley, when we were younger and we were in school, there were 2 things that were unspoken, but they were there. They were what they call the JCPs and LMAs. JCP meaning Job Creation Partnerships and Labor Market Agreements. All of us, experienced it in one way or the other, where the big companies came and did headhunting, either in the schools or in youth service camps, and then if you were proficient, if you were a first-class student, you were very, very certain that you're going to get engaged. Now, that is at the level, at the output. Now, in the input, when you look at people who are also now doing research, because research is funding heavy, and you're not getting anybody who is supporting that funding program. In fact, a lot of masters and PhD students actually have to fund, their PhD research, especially in agriculture, and it can be extremely, extremely financially demanding. So that's also a lull. So what needs to happen, and if we create this national mass, let us say, for instance, that we have a national policy that is allocating 20 million hectares of land to production. And the word is not agriculture, production. And then we're now segregating it into streams: forage, animal husbandry, medicinal plants, ornamental plants, spices, this, that. Now, with that 20 million hectares, then you now have your output of saying for every hectare we're going to be getting a minimum of 10, tons. So now it is down where you can now begin to fit in your human capital through the creation of these job creation partnerships and labor market agreements. Now, sometimes when you speak like this, people say to you, oh, you know your problem, you're not practical, you're too theoretical. And I said, you see, you can speak that way because you don't actually know that theory is the basis
for practice.
For practice. If you don't, develop a theoretical framework, you can't be able to get any, because that's where the thinking of what it is you want to do happens. Now, and that will now be where we are now talking about, like I said earlier, national volumes. This is where you can actually say you can have your shop rights or whatever. This is what South Africa, with 13% of its land arable, 80% of the fruits and vegetables you see in ShopRite come from South Africa.
That's true.
Okay? Because there's this aggregation. They have an understanding of how many tons of each that is going to be coming out by the end of every, farming cycle. Okay? We don't have that here. What we now have are people, now this is from Yobe, some other person is from Bauchi, some other person is from Bonu. They are sharing some maybe 10, 20, 30, 40, 500 hectares of land. This one is planting ugu. This one is planting pepper. This one is planting this. This one is planting that.
Subsistence.
By the end of the day, everybody is carrying one bag and going to the market to sell. But if you had aggregated those people and said to them, you know what, for this cycle, we're going to be planting corn. And then we're going to be creating this commercial cooperative for you. You can now bring in a Kingsley, who is an agronomist. You can bring in a Nanado, who is an agroeconomist. You can bring in Emeka, who is probably a machinist. You can bring in somebody not to pay them. They now do what you call the shared prosperity model, where because we know that we're going to be getting 10,000 hectares that is going to be costing this at the primary level. Okay, so you're going to be making profit at 3 levels. Primary level, secondary level, and then when you now begin to now package into basmati rice, perfumed rice, this and that and that. So that's the simple
And you can imagine, if we got this right, what impact it would have on our foreign reserves.
Oh, yes.
And how much we spend on not just importing food, but also importing certain additives that we need, whether it's corn syrup, yes, whether it's industrial starch, or otherwise. All of these items, they're all right here with us if we got it right. And so there will be a boost instead of monitoring and seeing that, oh, this year, at this time, our foreign reserves is 35.6. Oh, no, it's gone up to 43, and everybody will be applauding. And there's pressure on the Naira, and so on and so forth.
The multiplier effect of all this is going to be unimaginable. Everything is going to be touched.
And I like to point out, that's why we have also focused on it in terms of getting the philosophical underpinning. Yes. It is not sufficient to say you want to create so many jobs, you want to engage many persons. If the thinking, which is the theoretical foundation, is gotten right, then of course it will facilitate what the other goals are.
Dr. Emeka Okengwu, we thank you so much for being part of this program this morning. It's our pleasure being with us, and we keep coming and knocking at your door. You keep opening for us, I believe.
Thank you, sir.